aside from your own ambition and determination and character traits, there were two things that really made a difference in your ability both to complete school and to become the successful business person that you were able to become. And one was getting a guide dog. And maybe you could talk about that process to us. That, to me, that was, I love the way you kind of went into some detail. You know, we see the sighted of us, we see people with guide dogs, but really have no understanding of the whole process of bonding with the dog and so on. Take us through that.
It's a really remarkable thing to see what these dogs are capable of. I went there not knowing anything about it other than what people had told me about guide dogs being able to really change the game of mobility for people who are blind. And so I go there and I arrive on campus at Leader Dogs for the Blind in Rochester Hills, Michigan. And I arrived with a mindset that wasn't too productive. I was still very bitter and angry from the fact that I'd gone blind. You know, we ask kids all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? None of them say they want to be a blind person. Right. So that was a difficult time coming to grips with that. It wasn't what I had signed up for. Life happens to all of us at some point. And so how do we move through that process? And a lot of that happened to me when I was at Leader Dogs. And I went there to learn about how to use a guide dog, but I ended up learning a far more valuable lesson to me. Now, there were people there, some of them had mental impairments and they were also blind. Some of them were on dialysis because they had diabetes that had robbed them of their eyesight. And some were deaf and blind, and they were getting a dog to be independent. Now, for these people, we had to talk with an interpreter who would sign into their hands, and that was the only way that they could communicate. Yet they were getting a guide dog to travel independently. Now, it's one thing when you meet someone on the street and you hear how rough they have it, but it's another thing altogether when you live with them firsthand and see their challenges for a month. And that's really what the process was, is living with them for a month as we got our guide dogs. It really etches it into your memory and forever changed my perspective on life. I learned that happiness is not a feeling and it's not an emotion. It's a decision that we choose to make every single day when we wake up.
Yes,
and so
definitely.
We could either let the circumstances of life affect our happiness, or we can choose to drive our own outlook on life. And I learned firsthand that everything, our perspective, is anchored to, number one, gratitude in our lives. And never was that more apparent to me than that.